A warm good morning to all the Camnet TV viewer. This is a breakfast show, a show that comes to your screen every morning from 07 hours to 09 hours, where we talk about a lot of policy issues and issues that are happening around our country. Today on a Friday specifically, we look at the business sector of what is happening around, and we know at this particular point what the biggest elephant is in the room, that is the IMF bailout package. Today, we will be discussing some of the conditionalities attached to the International Monetary Fund. And a lot of people have been asking, and rather a lot of people were challenging the government to say, can you publish the conditionalities attached to this 1.3 billion United States dollars bailout package that the IMF has graced Zambia with? Remember, this is a loan, and for you to borrow, your people need to know what is it that are the conditions attached to that borrowing. So this morning, that is what we'll be looking at, hopefully to have a guest in studio. I'm not going to excite you about who the guest is, but I'm just hopeful that we're going to have a wonderful discussion from now on till 09 hours. A lot of things are happening around, and we know that the world is currently mourning the death of Queen Elizabeth II. She has been a queen for over 70 years now, or rather, roughly 70 years. She becomes the longest serving monarch of all time. She died yesterday, and of course, family members have already traveled, and messages of condolences are pouring from all around the world, including Zambia's Republican President Hakainde Hichilema. Yesterday, we did see that he issued that statement. So for now, I know a lot of people are in mourning. The world is mourning. She was an influential person, but yeah, we are saddened by that development. But this morning, of course, life moves on, and we will be looking at the conditionalities attached to the International Monetary Fund. A lot of questions again have been asked to say, what does this mean now that Zambia has gotten herself an International Monetary Fund IMF program? What does it mean? A lot of people have been asking. I think I've been seeing those questions going around even on the page of the Ministry of Finance. So this is a program that will get to discuss what it means for that bailout package and what conditions are attached. It has been a topic of discussion. Tell us the conditionalities were published. And of course, President Hakainde Hichilema even went further and appealed to people to ensure that you study or read and understand the conditionalities, so that when you're making criticism, you're making them out of informed decisions. So this morning, that is what we bring you. We will be discussing some of those conditionalities. Keep those phones coming. Keep the conversation coming. You can send through those messages on our Facebook page, or you can send us a message or call, because this is a call-in program. But before I even speak too much than what I have already said, we are going to look at what the doctors have for us this morning. So let's go to the doctor's corner. And of course, in the program, we are going to look at the money market. Also, how is it that our local currency is performing against other major convertibles? But for now, let's go to the doctor's corner.
Good morning, viewers. This is your doctor, Dr. Kakumsi Mpungwe, Assistant Director, Adolescent Health, working from the Ministry of Health. I come from the Medical Women Association of Zambia. This week, we've been talking about adolescent health, and yesterday we talked about adolescent health services in Zambia. So we talked about how the ministry is training health workers to provide health services that respond to the needs of young people or adolescents. We also talked about working with peer educators who are adolescents trained to disseminate information to their fellow adolescents. And we also talked about development of materials that help increase knowledge levels of adolescents in various health issues. And we also mentioned that we are not just using one form of channel of communication. We use written materials, television, radio, and social media. So today we'll continue talking about a similar topic. We want to discuss how adolescents or young people can participate in health programs. So as you earlier on heard, we have groups that exist at selected health facilities which young people can be part of. So young people can decide to participate in activities organized by peer educators so that they learn more about health issues and also educate others who don't have that privilege to be part of that group. We are also encouraging in-school adolescents to join and form clubs that talk about health issues affecting young people, so that together they can encourage each other, how they can stay away from risky behaviors, how they can sustain good behavior, and how they can also safeguard their health. Then we also have in some religious settings where there are youth groups, I think young people can also participate, join those groups, participate and learn one or two things on how they can avoid risky behavior and also enlighten themselves in terms of health issues. We also encourage young people to be part of what is happening at clinics. All health clinics have what they call activity plans, a lineup of activities that they intend to undertake in the communities that they serve. So we are encouraging young people living in communities where there are health facilities to engage the health centers so that they can add a voice to what activities targeting young people can be included in the plans that health facilities have to serve the communities they are operating in. There are a number of health programs that take place in the communities. We also want young people to be involved, adolescents to sensitize their peers on what health issues are happening. Like now we have COVID-19. Young people can participate in sensitizing their peers, their friends, on what COVID is, the importance of getting vaccinated, and any other health problems, malaria and TB. So we want young people to add their voice to all the health programs that we are implementing in our communities, so that the information we would want to relay to young people is better understood, better packaged, especially if it's coming from young people who the audiences can relate to. So those are some of the activities young people can participate in. I'm also glad to announce that we have, through the Zambia helpline, some toll-free lines that young people can call, 116, 933 and 5600. These are helplines that are available. Young people can call without paying anything to find out about any health issues that affect them and where they can access services within the community they are calling from. So these are some of the things young people can participate in. Just to summarize again, we are saying young people can be part of peer educators groups that work hand in hand with health facilities to educate young people on health issues. They can also be part of school clubs or youth clubs, youth organizations in religious setting. They can participate in activities that clinics plan and undertake in the communities they live in. They can also make use of the toll-free lines 116, 933 and 5600 to obtain information on any health issues, and also to report any abuse happening within their homes and also in the community. Thank you so much for listening today. We'll continue tomorrow with another topic. Continue watching Camnet TV. Goodbye.
There you have it. That was Dr. Kakungu Simpukwe, and of course she was discussing how is it that adolescents can participate in health programs in the country. I know the stage of adolescent is one that is very tricky, and of course one that is very interesting, but of course it is also tricky because that's the time most young ones, now adolescents, begin to develop a lot of features and differences in their lives. You find that most of the time they shun away from accessing health facilities because they think, when I go to the clinic, or doctor, and most of them have ended up having serious consequences of the problems that they have because they do not want to visit health facilities. Adolescents, if you're watching me on this program, ensure that if you have a problem, you notice anything unusual about your body, and you know yourself, maybe you did something, and of course you just notice there's something that is unusual, please visit the health facilities. But visiting health facilities and knowing about health programs does not only imply that you go there when you have a problem. Even when you don't have a problem, you might not know what might happen with your body. I think when I was an adolescent, I didn't really think about sicknesses and stuff like that. I think it wasn't on my mind to even think of visiting health facilities. But now, the time we are living in, it's always important for you to have regular checkups by a health facility. And of course, don't forget to exercise. Exercise to ensure that you are very healthy. I always say a healthy country needs healthy people. A healthy people makes a healthy nation. So let's ensure that we visit our health facilities to understand some of the programs, or rather to understand some of the conditionalities that we are going through. You might not have a condition, but I think everyone is a potential patient until you visit a health facility. So adolescents, let's take up what the doctor have advised, and of course she left her contact in case you are shunning from, of course, visiting health facilities. You can call the number that the doctor just gave out and speak to them, speak to health practitioners, because we want to see you good and healthy and in good shape. Speaking about a healthy nation, how is it that our local currency is performing against other major convertibles this morning? Kwacha, we've seen it has been doing quite well for some time. A lot of praises are coming around. Kwacha now is one of the strongest currency in Africa. Kwacha this, Kwacha that. Let's see here what the Kwacha is saying this morning. So the Zambian Kwacha there against the United States dollars is buying at 15 Kwacha 35 ngwe and selling at 15 Kwacha 66 ngwe. The Zambian Kwacha against the Great Euro is buying at 15 Kwacha 28 ngwe and selling at 15 Kwacha 59 ngwe. Impressed there, the Zambian Kwacha is performing better with the euro compared to even the United States dollars. That is good. The Zambian Kwacha there against the Great British Pound is buying at 17 Kwacha 63 ngwe and selling at 17 Kwacha 97 ngwe. The Zambian Kwacha against the South African Rand is buying at 0 Kwacha 88 ngwe and selling at 0 Kwacha 90 ngwe. There it means the Kwacha is performing slightly better than the South African Rand. This is money market for this morning against the euro there. We've seen Kwacha do quite well, and of course against the United States dollars there. That is the money market for this morning. If you are a business person who is of course trading from outside, that is what you expect today, even as you send your monies to buy those goods and of course products. And then of course we've seen the Kwacha do quite well, and a lot of people now are looking to buying cars. And yeah, of course, if you've been saving for that car, go for it. Zambian Kwacha there. But please, even last time I emphasized that I sit for my influx of my VITs. Let's go for quality cars to ensure that we have quality cars on, of course, our roads. You know, sometimes the effect of buying too much cars that are on out is they also have effect on our economy. They also have effect on our environment. So even as we are planning to get this car, I know there's that excitement. Let's go for quality. It is very important. And then at this particular point, we are going to zoom into some of the stories that made headline in our news yesterday. We know there has been the issue of Boma Lusambo and Joe Malanje. I know my colleague yesterday discussed that in detail, but even today, development happened yesterday, and we're just going to look at what is happening. Then now, Joe Malanje and Boma Lusambo have decided to pursue matters further from what was the judgment that was passed. They now want the court to compel the Electoral Commission of Zambia to nullify, to rather stop the by-election, to ensure that they are also included on the ballot. So they've gone to do that, and I don't know what the outcome will be, but the case has been moved to Monday. Let's see what Monday has to offer, but let's see what happened yesterday. And of course, in again another story, the Minister of Justice, Mulambo Haimbe, yesterday equally issued a statement trying to interpret what was the court's judgment. He said, I've seen a lot of people are celebrating and calling on the decision that was made by ECZ to say it was on the wrong side. So he was clarifying to say the court did not actually say that they two qualify to contest, but they were interpreting what is the meaning of a nullification. So a lot of interesting happenings around, and this is a more reason why we need our constitution to be amended. We need a lot of lacunas that we've observed in the constitution to be dealt with. We can't continue having laws that speak to one thing and again contradict itself. We've seen a lot of clauses even in our constitution that say this. Again, down there it says but, or it says, you know, when I was at school, when you hear the word but, it kills everything in a paragraph of what you said earlier. So I don't know. Let's get to hear what the court's decision was yesterday.
The Constitutional Court on Wednesday, 7th September 2022, ruled that Bowman Lusambo and Joseph Malanji are eligible to recontest the Kabushi and Kwacha by-elections respectively because they are not disqualified, and this brought joy to the PF camp.
Congratulations.
But however, this decision has also left a lot of unanswered questions, with various stakeholders making their independent interpretation to suit their justifications in terms of clarifications. Wednesday, 8th September 2022, Justice Minister Mulambo Haimbe told a media conference in Lusaka that it was wrong for anyone to give an impression to the public that the Constitutional Court has declared Bowman Lusambo and Joseph Malanji respectively eligible and duly nominated to contest the September 15, 2022 by-election in Kabushi and Kwacha constituencies.
To be very clear, it's very important. The court only dealt with the fourth question, which is the import of Article 72. And in doing so, the court simply said, we have discussed this issue before, we have decided this question before in the Law Association of Zambia case, and their decision was that a disqualification and a nullification are not one and the same thing. The court did not, in doing so, make any order directed at ECZ to conduct fresh nominations as requested by the applicants. It did not declare them eligible for the 15th as requested, and of course it did not declare the decision null and void. The court declined to address those issues. So all we have is a determination by the court that a nullification, as was previously, a nullification and a disqualification are not one and the same thing.
He urged the people to remain calm as the court processes have been exhausted.
We now would like to please ask the general public and all stakeholders to maintain calm and to maintain decorum until these matters are finally concluded. When will they be concluded? The very applicants have got a case before the High Court where they are asking these same questions. It is until the High Court has dealt with that matter in whatever manner that the High Court deems fit that the Republic, the people will know how next to move. It is through that process. ECZ is a party to that case. In fact, the applicant sued ECZ again. So the decisions that were to be made, I believe, by ECZ going forward would be based on that particular court matter. Of course, we as government cannot dictate what ECZ should do next.
But the Patriotic Front-led camp has gone ahead to commence contempt proceedings against Justice Minister Mulambo Haimbe for allegedly crossing boundaries on matters before court. Patrick Soko, Camnet News in Lusaka.
Application to be joined to the proceedings before the Lusaka High Court, where former Kabushi Member of Parliament Bowman Lusambo and his counterpart, former Kwacha Member of Parliament Joseph Malanji, have petitioned the Electoral Commission of Zambia, has been granted. This afternoon, Thursday, the High Court granted the joint application recently filed by the Attorney General and has directed the state to file its submissions by tomorrow.
It has been joined to the action, and they've been asked to file whatever they have to file by 10 hours tomorrow. and we will respond by 14 hours tomorrow. The court is desirous to sit on Monday at 14, where we should be heard on our application to stay the elections in Kavushi. As you may be aware, the Constitutional Court gave an interpretation of what it means to nullify and what it means to disqualify, meaning that effectively our clients do qualify. And since they do qualify, with a question as to whether the election should go on or not.
On Wednesday, the case in which the duo had commenced before the Constitutional Court, the court in its majority judgment ruled that the disqualification of a person did not include persons whose seats were nullified.
In the case in the Court, what are we doing in the High Court? Yeah, I think it's very clear. People like Mlambo Haimbe don't seem to understand the procedure. The issue is very simple. The reason why the Court did not address the three questions was because that lies, the power to deal with nominations lies with the High Court. And one thing that comes out very prominently is the fact that as far as we are concerned, the Court has already ruled that these guys are eligible to stand. So the next question is, when will the nominations come? When will the next election, or when will the election be held? That is what this court now in the High Court will deal with. Having already concluded that these people are eligible, the next question now is, when is the election date and when are the next nominations? That is what has brought us to court here. So if they don't understand what is going on, they can watch afar, but we will not allow Mr. Haimbe to be attacking the judiciary.
In this case, Mr. Lusambo and Malanje wants the court to quash the decision by ECZ made on the 25th of August 2022, where the commission rejected their nomination papers on the basis that they do not qualify to contest the election that was nullified by the Constitutional Court, citing Article 72(4) of the Constitution of Zambia Amended Act No. 2 of 2016. The two claim that the decision is illegal, procedurally improper, and is therefore null and void. Mr. Malanje and Lusambo have argued in their petition that ECZ, through its returning officer, has no powers to reject their nomination papers on the basis that their elections were nullified, stating that this action violates Article 72(2) of the Constitution. The matter comes up on Monday next week. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
There you have it. Those are the happenings in the courts. Very interesting. Everyone is interpreting the law the way they feel is best. So I don't know who to ask, if it is the courts or if it is the judicial minister, the Minister of Justice. Pardon me, I almost said the judiciary minister. Yeah, Minister of Justice. Maybe perhaps we need one of such ministry. Who knows? Because we have a lot of happenings around and a lot of debate that is going around. I don't know, maybe. What is your comment with regards to these issues? Who do you think is on the wrong side? Was the minister in the right position to issue a statement on court matters, trying to explain what is it that the court meant by passing that judgment? On the other hand, those involved, Joe Malanje and of course Boma Lusambo, have also appealed to the High Court, trying to compel the Electoral Commission of Zambia to quash the decision they made to not allow the two to contest, now considering that the court has ruled that their nullification did not mean they disqualify from participating. A lot of interesting happenings around, and we hope stakeholders who are speaking to the amendment of the Constitution can take those matters also into consideration, because also we have some clauses, if you've seen in the Constitution, that stipulates that when someone causes a by-election, they do not qualify. But how can we also have supporting clauses down there when we have that clause speaking to everything? So a lot of happenings in the Zambian Constitution need to be looked into by those in authority. So let's get to interact this morning. Those who are watching us on our Facebook platforms and those who are watching us on the television set, let's get to discuss. And of course, we know that the world is mourning the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the longest serving monarch. And of course, she passed on yesterday, and messages of condolences are pouring from all around the world. Zambia's Republican president, even yesterday, wrote a statement where it was, of course, saddened by the development and, of course, wished the family all the best during this trying moment. It is not easy to lose someone you look up to, regardless of how old they are. Sometimes you need the old-aged people in the country. Imagine a country, or rather a world, that is only full of young people. Where are we going to get wisdom from? So in any circumstance, or regardless how someone dies and at what age, they are very important to the contribution of the world. And of course, she was an icon that a lot of people looked up to. So we cannot ignore that fact. And of course, Zambia mourns with the rest of the world, and of course with the United Kingdom, that is of course mourning. We will continue, of course, to speak to those matters even throughout the day, because it is sad for the whole world. Everyone is talking about it because they didn't expect that it would be so soon. I know someone is saying, so soon, what do you mean? No, of course, we didn't expect that she would pass on like yesterday. But of course, death is inevitable, and you cannot ignore that fact. Something interesting also yesterday. I know a lot of people, since the government made a pronouncement to say they will be reuniting them with their families, a lot of expectations have been going around from people. A lot of applications, actually, government has been receiving a lot of applications for them to be transferred, or rather moved, so that they can be reunited with their family. Yesterday, the Civil Service Public Commissioner held a meeting in, of course, sideline with a meeting at the Ministry of Health by Health Minister Sylvia Masebo. And during that meeting, a question was asked, what is the status of government reuniting people with their family? And of course, it gave a response to say, in as much as, you know, this looks as if it's an easy undertaking, it's quite not as easy as it seems. It's a very complicated situation, but government is working on it. I know I've been receiving quite a number of messages from people trying to ask if we can confirm from the relevant authorities when they intend to begin this process. The commissioner yesterday did mention that they've already begun the process, but he said it's not an easy undertaking, as easy as it may seem. So the question that maybe most of the people can ask is, when government was making such pronouncements, did they do some consultations? Because, you know, sometimes politicians are quick to make pronouncements, but they don't know the repercussion of that. So maybe did government do enough consultations, because it said soon? So maybe one question, the question that one may ask is, if government was planning to move people, how can you start with a process of recruiting people instead of starting with a process of transferring people, so that you understand the vacancies that are there and then you employ people? But in this case, government starts by employing people, and now they want to transfer people. So in this particular place, if maybe they said the vacancies are only 4, and those vacancies are filled up, what happens if maybe 6 people want to withdraw? It means, again, a vacancy will be felt. So maybe the question might be, why didn't the government start with a process of transferring people, seeing the vacancies that are there, and then employing? Did you think maybe the government rushed to employ, and then you promise people to say, we are going to move you and unite you with their family? Maybe this is the challenge that government is having. But yesterday, the Civil Service Commissioner did confirm to say it is not an easy undertaking, as easy as it seems. And he gave examples of, maybe if you are an agriculture officer in Southern Province, and then you are requesting that to go to Chilidabombo, maybe you are specialized in seseflies. You find that in Chilidabombo there isn't such. So what are you going to do when you go there? This will make some of the people not qualify, actually, to be moved to the places that they think might be suitable. Again, among other things that they did speak about yesterday is the fact that COVID-19 guidelines now have been lifted. You do not have to put on a mask if you do not feel like putting on it. It's no longer mandatory, but it is by choice. And of course, social distancing, all those things have been lifted. You don't have to really social distance unless you feel like sanitizing, but that does not mean we relax the measures. Where need be, let's continue doing that. So if you're going to a mall today and you are told to say put on a mask, you have got the right to tell them to say, I don't feel like doing that. So of course, that was announced yesterday by Minister of Health, Sylvia Masebo. Again, the minister promised that recruitments continue. So for those who were not part of the list, maybe you might be considered in the next recruitment. What is it that I'm talking about? We are going to zoom into that story that made headline yesterday, of course, done by Prudence Chota. Let's get to see what they said. I'm sure we are quite having a challenge there from the tech team. I don't know if we are ready to play that clip, the clip, pardon me, tech team. Let's get to hear what you have to say with regards to that. And of course, a lot of happenings today. We are looking at the conditionalities attached to the International Monetary Fund. I know the IMF issue has been hot and it has been a topic of discussion, but a lot of questions have been asked with regards to what are the conditionalities attached to the International Monetary Fund. So today, that is a topic of discussion, and of course, we are expecting a guest in studio soon who is going to help us discuss that in detail. So if you're watching the program and you're wondering what are the conditions attached to the International Monetary Fund, this is a program where we are going to be analyzing some of those things, conditionalities attached to the International Monetary Fund. I know a lot of people have been saying the fuel pump price, the monthly fuel review was necessitated by the IMF bailout package. Yes, of course, we have seen that is also part of the conditionalities that were attached to say government should revise it from 60 days to 30 days, that is in a month. That was part of the condition that was attached. Among other things also is that before government can go ahead to do the farmer input support program, they need first to write to the International Monetary Fund, who will analyze, if at all, what government is proposing is, of course, sustainable, and then give them a go-ahead. A lot of interesting things we are going to discuss in the program together with the guests that we are having this morning. And of course, a lot of things, maybe you're wondering what other features are attached to these conditionalities. Among them also is one that I saw to say the central bank, that is the Bank of Zambia, can no longer lend to government institutions. So if you're a government institution, you can no longer go to the Bank of Zambia and borrow resources. Part of the conditionalities there, and of course the Bank of Zambia bill, of course, also needs some bit of amendments. But we're going to go to plain, or rather zooming in, the headline yesterday that I just talked about earlier, where the Minister of Health and of course the Public Service Commissioner were speaking. Let's zoom in that story. Since the United Party for National Development UPND administration took over office on 12 August 2021, it has made several pronouncements, among them the promise to reunite families who have been working in different provinces. The pronouncements, however, seems to be taking longer than usual, and one may wonder if the government did enough consultations before making such pronouncements. The Civil Service Commission chairperson, Peter Mumba, however, says the exercise of reuniting families is not an easy undertaking, but says government has started the process.
It's not always easy to transfer somebody from point A to B without taking into considerations certain factors. But let me hasten to mention that the exercise is going on, although it is not as easy as you might expect. But certainly we have transferred some people in the way of uniting the families.
Meanwhile, the commissioner says all those newly recruited health workers whose names are not appearing in the government database will be given their recruitment letters before the end of September 2022.
I can simply say very soon they will receive their appointment letters. If I may stray a bit, perhaps I can confidently say within this month. Before the end of this month, we should be able to conclude this exercise.
And speaking at the same meeting, Health Minister Sylvia Masebo says all health workers who were recruited under the World Bank project and were assured of employment in the civil service but were left out among the 11,000 newly recruited health workers will be considered in the next recruitment.
Employment of the over 11,000 plus 30,000 teachers is not an accident. It is the policy of the New Dawn government. It is unprecedented, it is in the manifesto, it will continue because that is what was promised by His Excellency and his team.
And the minister says government has since lifted all the mandatory COVID-19 guidelines such as masking up in the public, social distancing, mandatory sanitizing, among other things.
I'm pleased this afternoon to announce that government has now decided to lift restrictions, in particular on 1, public gatherings, 2, the need for physical distancing, And 3, mandatory wearing of masks. However, those who wish to wear masks for health reasons or indeed other personal reasons may continue to do so.
Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News. There you have it. That was the Public Service Commissioner and the Minister of Health, Sylvia Masebo, yesterday, who were speaking to a number of issues. We know one particular issue is the fact that some people whose name appeared in the newspaper as having been recruited among the 11,000 are not appearing in the government database. So your name is in a newspaper, but you go to get your letter, you discover that you are not in the system. So there has been quite a lot of those complaints coming from almost all parts of the country. But yesterday, the commissioner assured that before the end of this month, everyone whose name appeared in the paper, but you might not be appearing in the government database, you will be given your letters. Hopefully this happens, because we did see the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Health, say the same last month, but she did not fulfill that. She said before the end of August, everyone will be given their letters, but August is done. And of course now the Public Service Commissioner says, the Civil Service Commissioner now says, it will ensure that everyone is given their letters by the end of September. So we hope that will be true, because I can sympathize with most of those. Imagine your name being found in the paper, the excitement, and then you go there only to be told you're not in the database. And we've got a lot of people who are now asking you, because you told the whole world you are there, now everyone is asking you, when are you going? Molena Lisa, you don't even have an explanation to give them. It's quite disheartening and saddening, and of course it has brought a lot of unrest for those who are affected. And of course I feel their pain, but we hope the government, the listening government of the United Party for National Development, UPND, can take that into consideration and see how they can help those people to ensure that they report for duty. Of course, they are also concerned with the fact that their friends are getting paid, but for them it is another story after story. It is quite disheartening, but we just hope for the best for those who were, of course, employed and their names not yet in the government database. But of course also for those who've been looking forward to have their transfers approved. Yesterday the commissioner did say it is not an easy undertaking. It's not as easy as it sounds, but government is working on that. So I know a lot of you have been expecting. Perhaps let's get to hear what you have to say with regards to government saying they are going to transfer people, but today government says it is not an easy undertaking. It's not as easy as it seems. But of course he did say the process has begun. Maybe we get to hear from those who've already received their transfer letters wherever you are. Then of course it is no longer mandatory for you to put on a mask in public places. Government lifted all those conditionalities because we have seen a reduced number of COVID-19 cases. So there is no way or no need to subject people to continue putting on masks in the public. So government yesterday did make an announcement that now you are free to move without masks, but that does not mean you cannot take precaution. If you feel like me, I want to continue wearing masks, please do. If you feel I want to continue social distancing, please do. We have different immune system. Maybe the way I might react when I have the virus is different from the way you might. So if you know your immune system is a little bit weaker, please continue following the 5 golden rules of wearing masks, social distancing, sanitizing in the public and stuff like that. We still need you in this country because your contribution to Zambia, of course, cannot be overlooked. We know, of course, that a lot is happening in our country and a lot of you have the solutions to what is happening. That's why sometimes we request that you just call and make those submissions. But this morning, of course, we are expecting a guest who's just behind schedule a little bit because they had challenges, of course, locating this place. But we will have them in studio soon. And we are discussing the conditionalities attached to the International Monetary Fund. So if you want to know, this 1.3 billion, what is the condition? This is the program where we are discussing some of the conditionalities. And do you, of course, agree with some of the conditionalities that have been attached to the International Monetary Fund? For example, the IMF has told the Zambian government that when it comes to revising the fuel pump price, you have to move it from 60 days to 30 days. That's why we've been seeing fuel pump price now being revised every month, because there are no subsidies attached to fuel. Subsidies could fuel a natural cycle, they remove them, and now government says let the consumers pay the cost. And transfer those monies to other social sector spending, like for example, increase resources under the social sector spending. That is for those who receive monies every month. And of course, we've seen there's an increase in the number of people who are now receiving social cash transfer program. And of course, government is saying if you have to do FISIP, the IMF is saying if you want to do the farmer input support program, of course you have to let the IMF know, and it will either agree or rather disagree or say, this is too much spending on this particular sector. So Chosan Poni, maybe give them 4 bags or 6 bags. We don't know. We've not yet done that, but that is also part of the conditionalities. Among other things, the Bank of Zambia can no longer lend to government institutions. So Bank of Zambia takuda no Ministry of Commerce maendo chitaboro ndalama ku Bank of Zambia. No, the Bank of Zambia will no longer lend to government institutions, regardless of who you are. The Bank of Zambia can no longer lend you resources. And of course, there is an argument to say in the government reserve, there is supposed to be a particular fee. You cannot exhaust money. For example, if the bank says, today fire, every time we reserve money about 4 billion United States dollars. So even if you have an emergency, you cannot go and exhaust those resources. Agreement that has been made between the Bank of Zambia, between the government of Zambia and the IMF does not allow that. So there is a particular fee which they've attached that Zambia needs to have in its bank account, or rather in its reserves, to ensure that we are not exhausting everything that we have in our reserve. So among those are just few of some of the conditionalities that have been attached to the IMF bailout package. Of course, we've seen a lot of economic benefits that are coming with it. And of course, among other things you should know is that this 1.3 billion is interest-free. When you borrow money sometimes in a bank, you are expected to pay back with interest. But for this IMF bailout package, there is no interest attached. Then for a period of 5 years and a half, we are not going to pay anything. We are not going to be paying anything to the IMF between now and the next 38 months and a half. So we are not going to be repaying back that money, but we are going to be using it for productive things in our economy. And then afterwards, we are going to pay back that money in a period of 10 years. So the 1.3 billion will be paid back, will be repaid back in a period of 10 years. So it is interest-free. And of course, for 5 years and a half, we are not going to be paying back anything. We are going to start paying back after a period of 5 years. But of course, this borrowed money has come with conditionalities. You can't just use this money anyhow as a government. No, you have to inform the IMF whenever you want to spend resources and what sector you want to channel these resources into. So a lot of people have argued to say, how can you borrow money in a bank and then the bank determines how you spend money? Yes, this is the conditionalities that comes with the IMF resources. That's why you'll see a lot of people criticize to say, no, you can't borrow. And whenever you have to spend, you have to inform them of how that resources are being spent. So that is also part of the conditionalities attached to the International Monetary Fund. So very soon we will be having a guest, of course, in studio who we are going to be discussing some of these conditionalities that have been attached to the IMF and how transparency they are to the government and, of course, other sectors. Enhanced debt transparency, government publishes a foreign finance project that government intends to undertake. So among also some of the conditionalities is if government wants to undertake, for example, or finance a project outside, you can't do that without informing the IMF your intentions to do that. And of course, a lot of things, I don't want to preempt myself, but a lot of conditionalities have been attached, and we will be having a guest soon in studio who we are going to be analyzing some of these issues with. So stay tuned to Camnet TV. We are going to take a short breather, and we will be back shortly to just discuss the conditionalities attached to the International Monetary Fund. So if you have questions regarding some of the conditionalities that we will be discussing, just send through those messages, comments, contributions on our Facebook platform. Let's get to interact. What is it that is there on our Facebook platform? You can send messages or you can call and make your submissions. So even as we allow the guests to settle this morning, we are going to take a short breather.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet television, call the numbers on your screen. Camnet television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet television, not just another channel.
Water is life. Each drop counts and each must be cherished. Our tried and tested product meets all international standards. With our smart drip technology, we aim to deliver precision irrigation designed to reduce blockage and wastage, ensuring a high yield. Renglow, your smart irrigation partner.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet television, call the numbers on your screen. Camnet television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet television, not just another channel.
Thank you so much for still staying tuned to Camnet TV. Camnet TV, remember, is not just another channel. This morning we are joined by a guest. For the first time, I'm excited in the program. I'm hosting a female to just discuss policy issues. We know we've got a lot of men who discuss these issues, but very few women actually come on and discuss about economic issues, policy issues. When it comes to business, a lot of women do not know, I don't know if I can say do not know or do not want to talk about some of these policy issues, economic matters, business issues. I don't know why. But I am excited this morning that I have been joined by a guest from the Center for Policy, Trade and Development and also from the Zambia Tax Platform. She is a researcher, very vibrant young woman doing great things in Zambia. Seated next to me is Ellen. Yes, Ellen. Yes, that is Ellen. Of course, she's going to introduce herself. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much. Maybe perhaps the guests and everyone watching around would like to know who you are. So maybe perhaps you can just start by introducing yourself.
Thank you so much, Prudence, and good morning to the viewers. My name is Ellen Makinishi, as introduced, and I'm a researcher under the Center for Trade Policy and Development and also Zambia Tax Platform. My work actually revolves around private sector development and mostly dealing with issues of public finance management as well.
Okay.
And so most of the work revolves around also just evidence generation and the things that are affecting the economy. And so that's mainly who I am in terms of work, and also in terms of profession, I'm an economist.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So just before we get to discuss a little deeper into this, we are going to take a short breather. I know I didn't give my director this directive, but just a short breather. In less than a minute, we will be back to discuss more on these issues. Stay tuned to Camnet TV.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet television, call the numbers on your screen. Television, bringing to your screens fair news, impassioned news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet Television, not just another channel.
Water is life. Each drop counts and each must be cherished. Our tried and tested product meets all international standards. With our smart drip technology, we aim to deliver precision irrigation designed to reduce blockage and wastage, ensuring a high yield. Rainglow, your smart irrigation partner.
We are discussing the conditionalities attached to the 1.3 billion United States dollars International Monetary Fund IMF bailout program that has been awarded to Zambia. A lot of people have been asking, what are the conditions attached to this IMF bailout package? Tilzeni, and of course, government did publish those and has encouraged people to take time and just go through the conditionalities to understand them so that when they are making criticisms, they are making them out of informed decisions. Speaking about informed decision, that's why this morning on this program, we are here to inform you about some of these issues. If you don't understand them and you have a question, you can just call through and make your submission. So earlier, I introduced my lady in studio with me who I am discussing with. Her name is Ellen Makinishi, and of course, she is a researcher from the Center for Policy, Trade and Development and also from the Zambia Tax Platform. And of course, Madam Makinishi, maybe just a little bit talk about this IMF bailout package. What is it? What is it that this is? A lot of people have been asking, I've been hearing questions such as, what are the benefits to me as an ordinary person? So maybe just discuss or rather talk about what this IMF bailout package is, even before we talk about the conditions attached to that.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. And to begin with, the extended credit facility in itself, this is more of concessional financing that the IMF gives to countries that are in situations where they need some form of economic help. So as a country, we are aware that Zambia has been in a debt crisis. And in 2020, if we remember correctly, we were one of the first African countries to also default on our debt payments, debt repayments, that is. And looking at even how our debt to GDP ratio was, we saw that it skyrocketed to as far as 120%. And this was quite high, looking at the threshold that has been provided for by the World Bank and IMF. As a country, was supposed to be around 65%. But being at 120%, that means that even in terms of managing our own resources, it was very constrained and challenging as a country. And so we saw that we were almost at a point of economic collapse. And this process in itself was one that was in dire need in terms of Zambia getting such a package, for us to be able to even bring all creditors on board, to speak to them on issues of how maybe Zambia can be helped in terms of debt restructuring. And also, this package in itself helps us to further negotiate terms under the G20 Common Framework, where we are calling upon the multilateral creditors, plurilateral and also bilateral creditors. Once we are able to sit with them in terms of how best they can help us restructure our debt and maybe even defer some of the payments that we need to make as a country, then it also provides room for us to talk to the private lenders or private creditors themselves. We are aware that by this month, we're supposed to pay the 750 million euro bond. And this money in itself still needs to be paid. And within the budget, the 2022 national budget, in terms of debt servicing, we saw that so much of our money, about 46% of our national budget, has been allocated to debt servicing. And this money will also cater to part of the payment of the 750 million euro bond. However, with the package in place, especially now that we have also gained some form of international confidence within the international community, it then provides room for us as a country maybe to even defer the payments. It's not that we don't have to pay back, but this just gives us room as a country to just be able to sit with all the creditors and see how best maybe they could even give us some favorable terms in terms of how we can pay back within the next 5 to 10 years as a country. So the extended credit facility in itself runs for a period of 3 years. But in terms of even payments, it goes to about 5.5 years. And there's also an extension of 10 years to it. So it gives us breathing room as a country to restructure our economy, given the economic challenges, the macroeconomic challenges that we have been facing. And so we've noticed that even since the change of government, there have been certain changes that have happened within the economy, especially in terms of even just trying to stabilize our exchange rates and inflation. And this has also helped in terms of how the country is being run. So basically, the package in itself gives us room for us to be able to negotiate with other creditors on issues of debt sustainability and restructuring.
Well said there from Ellen Makinishi. That is the guest that we are having this morning. She is a researcher from the Center for Policy, Trade and Development, and of course from the Zambia Tax Platform. A very powerful person. Of course, I am excited, I mentioned earlier, to know that I have a female guest speaking about these issues. Rare do we have people of such nature in our country, but we need their voices as well in today's discussion. You have spoken to some of the benefits and of course what this has brought to the Zambian economy. But we also know that these resources, in as much as they've been given interest-free, we don't have to pay interest, of course, given us a 5.5 months break before we can pay back and a period of extended 10 years to repay that loan. We know there are some conditions that have been attached, and a lot of stakeholders were crying to say, can you publish the conditionalities so that we can get to read them and understand them on our own. And of course, I even heard the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection at the meeting that we had say it would have even been better for government to have engaged us with these conditions even before they signed the agreement. So let's go to the conditionalities that have been attached to this plan. And of course, we know government now says they need to communicate a credible plan for fiscal adjustment and the publication of that even before government can spend these resources. So do you think this is one of the best thing that we need as a country to say before you can even use the resources, ensure that you give us a plan of how you want to spend this money?
A plan is very much necessary because we saw that from some time in 2015 up until 2021, there was a lot of mismanagement of funds. And this also led to us even having to borrow more because we're failing to spend our monies on investments that could retain some form of revenue and growth for our country. Most of the investments were going towards infrastructure development, which was okay. But then we needed to ensure that whatever investments we are making, we're able to channel out more monies for our own economy and our own growth. And so you find that within this program in itself, one of the emphasis that the IMF has indicated is to have a homegrown program in terms of reforms and policies that can work for our country. And so we see that most recently the government also issued the made official the 8th National Development Plan, in which they have set down some macroeconomic reforms and policies that are supposed to be able to help us in terms of economic recovery and macro sustainability in the long term. And some of these things that within even the plan, when you look at the objectives of the extended credit facility, and also you look at the 8th National Development Plan, you see that they're somewhat tallying and speaking to each other. So some of the things that have been highlighted is returning to debt sustainability through debt restructuring, and also ensuring fiscal, macroeconomic decentralization. We are also speaking to issues of prudent public finance management. The fact that as a country we haven't been able to manage our resources better, even in terms of social sector spending, this becomes much more dire for us to ensure that whatever interventions are being put in place can be for the benefit of even an ordinary Zambian citizen. And so realigning our economy would definitely be one way that even with the package in place, we can be able to ensure that whatever growth is in place is more inclusive and sustainable. And the fact that as much as there's this money in place, the thing is the IMF won't disburse this money at the same time.
Once.
Yes. So there are about several disbursements to be made, and this will be done after certain reviews are in place. So there's supposed to be some form of tracking mechanism that is supposed to help us maybe get another disbursement before anything else. So last week, Thursday, the first disbursement was given to Zambia of about $185 million. And then before the next disbursement, there's supposed to be a process where even the IMF Executive Board sees how we have performed so far with this process in place in terms of even the objectives that government has set, returning us back to fiscal sustainability, even in terms of ensuring that we have a single-digit inflation. So far, even our inflation levels have gone down, which is a good indication. Stability in our exchange rates, and also just in terms of dismantling arrears within the domestic market and also externally. So most of these plans are speaking to each other. And at the end of the day, what we want to see is that there's more transparency and accountability that is being put in place in how monies are being utilized in terms of public expenditure.
Okay, let me just come to that. When you talk about public expenditure, we know that among some of the things that are there is to contain physical risks by publishing things like the electricity cost of service study. And also we've seen they've indicated that we need to contain our physical risks and reduce inefficiency in the fuel sector by revising the fuel pump price, from 60 days to now 30 days. Which has now been affecting people because people have been saying this 30 days revision is not really good for the Zambian economy. That's why we've seen prices of goods not coming down, despite the country is inflation going down, despite having resources. We know that last time the Bank of Zambia did say government has collected a lot of revenue. So we are not seeing it go down because fuel pump price is now, the fuel price is now being revised every month. As a result, when it goes up, it goes down. Consumers are being particular and not responding to that because there is uncertainty in our economy. So maybe what can you say with regards to some of these conditions? For example, the one that says government has to revise the cycle of fuel from 30 days to now, from 60 days to now the 30 days that we have.
Okay, so in terms of fuel pump prices, the issue is, yes, it's both a domestic issue and also an international issue because more recently, when government did issue to remove fuel subsidies, we saw that there was a lot of concerns and fears by the public. But even in terms of just having to deal with the inefficiencies of how this sector is being managed, we found that there were so many arrears in terms of debt. And this is why government also opted to have these sort of cost-reflective tariffs in place. And you find that in as much as there's a lot of uncertainty, perhaps in the first half of the year, yes, we did see a lot of increments in terms of fuel prices, but more recently they have been reducing, and this is a good indication in itself. It gives some form of assurance, even in terms of businesses that are managing different sectors, say manufacturing, even within the transportation sector in itself. There's some form of assurance to say that once even the macroeconomic fundamentals are stabilized, there'll definitely be a pass-through effect. So at the moment, yes, there is uncertainty and we have to brace ourselves for this. But I think there are so many efforts in terms of just how government is trying to ensure that there's more efficiency in how most of these sectors are being run. And so even as a country, we shouldn't be thinking of just the short term. Perhaps, yes, there'll be certain casualties as we go, but in the long term, this will be to our own benefit. So we have to be looking at it from a point of view where we are coming from a point where we were in a desperate position as a country. And so certain changes and decisions needed to be made. And then we get to a point where now we are seeing these changes. And this in itself was some form of a point for government to just say that, okay, we need to face these hardships now so that we can be at a point where we benefit more in the near future. Because some of these changes and drastic measures needed to be made to ensure that there's more efficiency in how most of the operations are done within the energy sector, for example. So what then becomes much more important is how best people can maybe understand in terms of the issues that are currently happening within the economy. And there should be more some form of dialogue between government and the public in itself. Make them understand why these decisions in themselves are being made. Because there's also maybe some form of gap in terms of communication. And so you see that government is also trying to put in place platforms such as the public-private dialogue. You have these conversations on how best to address the challenges that even most of these sectors are facing. So this is one platform that can be used. But beyond that, we need to be looking at how best we can be more productive as a country. As much as we are trying to be efficient in how we are spending our resources, but also how best can we help most of our citizens to be productive and be economically engaged in various activities. And so one of the emphasis is also coming to job creation, which would be a good indication of how best people can be able to generate income or have a source of income to maybe even cope with some of the challenges that we are facing as a country. And so it's more of just how best we can work together and coordinate to ensure that whatever reforms are being put in place actually work to our advantage. Of course, in the short term, we may experience some of these challenges and constraints in terms of casualties, but in the long term, it will be to our own benefit.
So for now, we have to suffer a little bit to enjoy the future. What if you not be there in the future? Now, this brings me to this question. We've seen, among other things, the fact that the Bank of Zambia will not lend to government institutions. Let's talk about that. That is also part of the commitment that have been made in this sector to say, reduce the primary deficit, that is, reduce the borrowing requirement of the government, excluding interest, and also the government cannot borrow from the Bank of Zambia. So what benefit does this come with to the Zambian economy if at all government institutions cannot go and borrow from the Bank of Zambia?
I think this also just opens room for microfinance institutions and also the banking sector in general, in terms of just having to lend out money to the Zambian people in itself. So it's one way of them trying to ensure that the Bank of Zambia in itself has more autonomy in making decisions, because at the end of the day, you see that with the way we were running the economy and how government was borrowing money, it became difficult for us to even manage our own economy, even in terms of reserves that the country would have had. But if we're able to utilize most of our other banking institutions, because at this point, with the fact that even interest rates are going to be adjusted downwards, it gives more room for more people to actually borrow money from banking institutions at rates that are more favorable, and even in terms of payment periods. So it's more of just trying to find a way to circulate more money within the economy. As we are seeing it, this will also help in terms of just stabilizing our kwacha.
Okay.
And as it is, our kwacha has been appreciating. So these are just efforts to ensure that we are more at a point where it's more sustainable in terms of even stability, because there's the fear that with the appreciation of the kwacha in itself, with the fact that, yes, we have gained some form of international confidence, but it's easy to fluctuate. What we need to be looking at are homegrown solutions, how best we can ensure that this will actually benefit us even in the long term. And like avoid external shocks. When something happens even externally, say in the geopolitical space, it definitely has an impact on our economy. So if we can put in place measures that are able to ensure that even the the micro institutions and banking institutions are also involved in this process to ensure that there's more circulation of money within the economy, it will help us. Yeah.
We've seen, of course, the fact that the government can no longer go and borrow from outside. This condition, there's a condition there that if government cannot go and borrow resources anymore from outside, because now we have this program. But we know that our government thrives on borrowing, and we cannot also ignore the fact that every country borrows. So how do you think this is sustainable, where we just have to look at the program that we've been given by an IMF, but you cannot go out there and get resources from other institutions?
Okay, so actually it's not that we won't be able to borrow, because the program in itself unlocks potential for us to have more concessional financing from the international community. So what that means is that it also provides more support in terms of budget support with this concessional financing. So as a country, we ended up going to maybe even private creditors. And for them, you find that in terms of interest rates, they're quite high. But concessional financing in itself means that the interest rates are almost zero. And even the payment periods are much longer in terms of maturity. One of them being...
There's a commitment which the government made by saying no accumulation of new external debt under this program.
Yes. I saw the part where they did mention in terms of halting some procurement programs and also just in terms of accumulation of debt. That is true. But the issue is, as a country, we still need some form of financing from external parties at this point. So the IMF program helps us to unlock that in terms of just concessional financing. So we're dealing with multilateral partners. We're not going to be borrowing from private creditors where we have more interest rates. So if you've noticed, even now, we still have institutions such as the World Bank. I think even more recently, they did release about $500 million to Zambia in terms of just improving even our social sectors, in terms of social cash transfers and all. So we are aware that we still need to borrow as a country, but the kind of borrowing is what matters. Because if we end up borrowing money that will give us much more finances in terms of debt servicing, then it becomes a problem. But even as we are borrowing, the issue becomes then that we have to see how best we manage our resources currently to ensure that even whatever reforms are being put in place will be able to get us to a point that in the near future, we won't be able, we will be using more of our domestic resources in terms of even channeling our own development. And so with this in place, by government also just saying that they won't be looking to more external parties to borrow money, it's more of also just trying to enhance domestic resource mobilization. And that also entails that we need to grow most of our sectors, whether it's in agriculture, in mining, manufacturing, ensure that whatever interventions are in place bring us to a point where we're more productive as a country. And even within the current tax revenue base, what we need to do also then is to ensure that whatever loopholes are within most of these sectors, say tax evasion, issues of illicit financial flows, are also dealt with. So we need to be more efficient in terms of how we are running our economy. And so even the Public Debt Management Act that was recently published comes in much more handy, because then we're able to hold government accountable in how monies are being contracted, and also demand for them to have these quarterly reports that they'll be putting in place, so that people are aware of what processes are being taken by government. And the deal in itself is just a step in the right direction. What now we need to be doing more is how best we can then grow our own economy with our own resources.
That brings me to this question. We know the resources that have been contracted. In this case, we know that the 50% is going into growing the reserve, and the other 50% is going towards the national budget. But what I know is when you borrow resources and you know that you have to pay back, you need to invest them in, for example, projects that are going to give you return. But if we see in this case, most of the resources, for example, are being channeled towards social sector spending. And we know that most of social sector spending are consumption purposes, like, for example, recruitment, for example, social cash transfer, an increase in the number of those who are receiving funding under the social cash transfer programs like FISIP and stuff like that. All these are consumption purposes. So I look at this 50%, which goes into the national reserve. We know that money, know that if you, for example, spend in social sectors, mostly it's for consumption purposes. And this is the government previously condemned to say we saw a lot of resources being borrowed and being used for the social sector spending. And this is what, again, we've seen under this facility. What government should focus on to invest these resources to ensure we start paying back this loan?
So, yes, in as much as the finances are being channeled to social sectors, what then becomes more important is how we can equip our own people to be more productive.
Okay, let me just hold your thought just a little bit. I think we have a caller. Hello, good morning. Hello? Hello, good morning. Oh, I think we lost that caller. I don't know if it's on my side or if it's on the side of the caller, but if you have to make that contribution, please do call through, or if it is a question, do call, and of course, if it's a contribution, we will be able to accommodate you.
Just say that when it comes to spending in itself, yes, the fear is that most of these social sectors, I think there should be a sort of balance that we need to strike as an economy. So in as much as we are spending on our social sectors, helping more people be alleviated out of poverty, which is good. But the thing is to make them more productive, that they can be able to add to the national cake in terms of revenue. And so what becomes more important is also capacity building. There has also been emphasis in terms of women empowerment, entrepreneurship, and through even the small, medium, and enterprises ministry that has come about. These forward and backward linkages within the agriculture sector, you have mining, because most of our products also as a country are still in raw form, so we export more of raw materials. The manufacturing sector in itself can be able to enhance most of these materials. So we should be able to equip most of our people to just be equipped with the skills that they need to add more value to most of our goods, so that we can become more export-oriented as a country. We're also still import-dependent, meaning we import more than we export as a country. We can benefit from most of these trade agreements that we have, even under the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. It helps us then to ensure that we are at an advantage as a country. So by that, we need to be looking at how best we can improve our value addition in most of the sectors.
Okay. I know we have quite a number of people following us on our Facebook page. I've seen quite good numbers there. But if you have those questions that you would want responded to, please send through. We are just discussing the conditionalities attached to the International Monetary Fund. And of course, I am joined in studio by a researcher from the Center for Policy, Trade and Development, and from the Zambia Tax Platform, Ms. Eileen. And of course, she is explaining some of those issues. And speaking about a letter of intent, let's talk about that. We know that among the things that the IMF has given is the fact that before the government of Zambia can spend the money, they need to write a letter of intent to the IMF, informing them of how they want to spend their resources. So it's more like you go to a bank, you borrow money, and then before you spend the money, you have to write to a bank telling them that I want to spend this money on ABCD. Don't you think that sometimes might delay the implementation of some of the projects in our countries, looking at a process that you have to undergo of writing letters and then the IMF has to approve? Don't you think that in some way is going to be delaying the implementation of some of our projects?
Maybe, because we are yet to see how this actually plays out in itself. So there might be some form of delays, but I think so far in terms of how government has been interacting with the IMF, they've been very forthcoming in terms of just ensuring that things are moving accordingly in terms of planning. And so I don't think that should really be a worry in itself, because with government trying to be more transparent, there'll still be need for them to communicate effectively with the IMF itself and with the citizens, because we need to be involved in this process at every point as we continue, even in terms of talking about debt restructuring for the country. And so I think government already has some form of plan, given even the 8th National Development Plans in terms of what they want to achieve within the next 5 years or so. And so I'm sure with this timeline, with these plans in place, they probably have timelines. And they would ensure that things are not delayed, to maybe even write to them in advance so that by the time the response is coming, things are still on course. So for me, it's not really an issue of maybe a delayment, but how best we ensure that there's more transparency and accountability, because that's what even the Zambian people are still demanding for.
The issue of the FISIP, let's talk about that. I know this has been touched on in the conditionalities to say if government has to undertake anything that has to do with FISIP, they first have, of course, to speak to the IMF. And we know that FISIP, on the other hand, is a subsidy. There are subsidies that are attached to the FISIP program. And government has already said they might be cutting off some programs that require FISIP. So in this case, don't you think it is somehow going to disadvantage the country if at all maybe the IMF says, no, this year you cannot go with this particular budget that you've made for the FISIP program?
I think FISIP in itself, if you notice from the 8th National Development Plan, it's not that they're phasing it out, but they just want it to be more efficient in terms of how it's being run. Because you find that the program has been in existence for quite a while, but the people that are being supported within this program don't graduate. So that is a problem. How do we ensure that most people are actually being able to graduate than always just being dependent on this program in itself? And so they have introduced the comprehensive agriculture program, which is supposed to be more efficient in terms of how it's run. But in terms of how this will be done, we are yet to see how efficient in itself it will be. But the issue is government wants to ensure that there's more efficiency and effectiveness in the running of this program. So it won't be phased out completely. It's just how the management and operations within this program is what is changing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, to every good thing, there is an end, and we are just at the dead end of the program. I know we've run out of time. We would have loved to have you in studio for quite some time to just analyze these issues, but I know you had challenges with locating this place, so it consumed much of our time. We will continue, however, to discuss conditionalities attached to the International Monetary Fund. But maybe before we conclude, what are your concluding remarks with regards to this program? I know a lot of fears are there out where people think the IMF will come and ask us to sell some of our government properties, because they've done that in the past. When we had an IMF program, they came in and told us sell all your mines, and now as it stands, Zambia does not have any mine. So how can you go back to the IMF? They might come back and tell us to sell some of the things. I know these are the fears that have been, of course, with people. So just as we conclude, what is your final conclusion with regards to the IMF program? 1.3 billion United States dollars.
So As much as, yes, people do have fears, the issue is IMF in itself is not imposing, say, reforms. But what they're dealing with is homegrown programs or policies that the government in itself is instituting for the people. And so what we need to be looking at is also just analyzing the 8th National Development Plan. There are so many provisions that government has spoken to in terms of just how we can reform our economy to be on a path of macroeconomic stability and recovery. Because as it is, we are coming from a point where there was a lot of mismanagement, as I earlier mentioned, and this continued to cripple us down as a country. And so whatever interventions moving forward should ensure that the country is more sustainable. And what we should continue to call upon is transparency and accountability. Even within the civil society space, this has been the emphasis, ensuring that whatever documentation government is working with is also available to the public. What people need is the information so that they can be aware. So there's supposed to be some form of even sensitization with this program, so that people don't feel that they are being, in a way, cheated by government, you know? So there's a report that has been published, and this would actually be helpful for people to understand much more of this program in itself and how it actually works. But the issue is we are working with the homegrown economic reform or policy that the government in itself has given to the IMF.
Okay. So one thing that is, of course, certain is the fact that the IMF program is depending on a policy that was given to them by the Zambian government. Yes. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes. So we're working with the 8th National Development Plan, and this is what we are using as a country for our own development. Because at the end of the day, even when we do have the program, but if we're not able to perhaps put in place policies and mechanisms that actually help our own economy, we might end up at the same point of going back to the IMF, maybe even 10 years from now. And that's not a situation that we want to see as an economy. So what we should focus more is growing our own economy with our policies in place and mechanisms and channels. Yes.
Eileen Makinishi, of course, is a researcher from the Center for Policy, Trade and Development and the Zambia Tax Platform. I was so excited this morning. For the first time, I'm having a female on the program to just discuss these policy issues. I think going forward, we need to see more women come on board and talk about these issues. She has been a good guest and given us a lot of productive information. In case you're just tuning in, this program was also being streamed live on our Facebook platform. You can just go through and, of course, listen to some of the conversation. However, conversation around the conditionalities attached to the International Monetary Fund bailout package, or rather program, will continue, and we will continue to speak to more people with regards to that. Till next time, from me, Prudence Chota, and of course my guest and the entire production team there, Madam Kalubam Shota, the breastfeeding mother, it's bye for now, and God bless you all.